So, Mahesh, you are a stage director who are in great demand. What made you say yes to directing Das Spake Shurpanakha, So Said Shakuni? What did you find intriguing or relevant about the play?
Well, I don't think it takes even one reading to realize how relevant the play is. And apart from the polemics, it's really at the heart of it. It is about the subaltern, right? People whose stories we haven't heard, and the myths as we know them, the stories that we hear. Some characters are seen as bad, and some characters are seen as good, right? So I think it's very important that we as a society and in the 21st century revisit whom we think is a good person and whom we think is a bad person. And more so now because the myths that we have grown up to hear must be countered with another story. It is not accepting one and rejecting another. I think it's just embracing the fact that there are more stories than one. And Poile is someone I have known for many, many years. In fact, I began my theatre journey with Poile and her husband Abhijit. And I am very, very familiar with her work. I've directed one of her plays earlier. And I've seen the premiere production 20 years ago of Das Spake Shurpanakha. And at that time too, I was really quite taken with the power of the play. It was a little advanced for its time then, but I could see how relevant it was even 20 years ago. It's just that the time is right where these stories are accepted, that people want to be challenged and don't mind the challenge that, okay, this is how we saw this character, but wait a minute, let's dig a little deeper into that. So I think its relevance can't be questioned. When Basab offered me and said, would you like to direct this play? It didn't take me. I said, I want to say yes immediately, but I told him, let me just read it again. I just wanted to make sure that it's still relevant. And oh yes, it certainly is. And of course, I've seen Ranjita's production of Alifa. Again, I've seen the original, the premiere production as well. And I was very impressed by the kind of technique employed in Alifa and, the production values. So I think I'm very pleased to be working with the Bay Area Dramatics company with this. So it's fortuitous that Basab is working with a playwright whom I've known for so many years.
I have heard you say in many interviews that theatre offers something that social media, entertainment, or streaming platforms simply do not. The human experience. Theatre makes you humble and evokes that very precious emotion called empathy. What do you hope audiences will walk away with after they watch Das Spake?
Okay. Well, I hope with more empathy because it's a beautiful play. And it is a play about, it challenges the single story. I think there's a danger in any society to have a single story. And we've seen those stories being challenged over and over again in the 20th century. The 20th century will be known for offering new stories because you look at even the idea of feminism came because we only had the single story from a male perspective, right? So completely a man's perspective. Society was being shaped from a male perspective. And so feminism came and the scales then tipped in the favor of the feminist or feminine perspective, right? So when people ask, why do we need feminism? It's so unnatural to say that to see everything through a woman's perspective. That's not, there are men as well. But then the question to ask is, why did we have masculinism for thousands of years? Right? So this is the response. So that's the second story that came out from a woman's perspective. Now, the third story to come out is why should it be different? Why should a woman's perspective be made different, whereas a man's perspective is seen as a regular perspective, and so on and so forth. So we continue asking the whys, and we have new stories to tell then as a result. So I think what something like Thus Spake Shurpanakha, So Said Shakuni. I know it's quite a mouthful of a title, but it has its own charm. I think it's a wonderful title. What it does is that it takes a story we all know. We know the myth. We know the story of the Ramayana. We know the story of the Mahabharata. Even if it is a peripheral knowledge of the story, we know it. As Indians, at least we do. So I think getting another perspective, right now, it definitely is something to think about. That here you have a character in the myth, a woman who makes the first advance sexually, right? And not only is she seen and depicted as a demoness, who changes her form to lure innocent men, right? That's the way she's read. But when she is sexually demanding, it is okay for the man to cut off her nose and chop off her breasts, right? So to literally sort of take whatever little agency she has, her sexuality, what makes her active as a person, to take that away, I think it's worth considering, and I think definitely deserves a story of its own. So I think it's very interesting. I think it's an African saying, I'm not too sure, that one village's god is another village's demon, right? The same person will be seen as a god in one village, and in another, that person will be seen as a demon, right? And I think it's also true with men and women as well, that, men have constructed women's behavior because we've had thousands of years of male writing, male stories told by men. So I think it's very important to have these stories. They're very, very much relevant today, and I think they to do.
And it ties in very well with your own writing, where you often overturn artificial constructs around gender, sexuality, and you explore cultural and the social value of overturning constructs around established and hero characters in your writing as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's always a resonance that as directors, we definitely look for stories that speak to us first, right? Unless it does, I don't think you will be able to provide the integrity which is required for a work of art to succeed. Otherwise, why are you doing it? So I think you've rightly pointed out, so these subjects, these themes are very much within my milieu and my métier in that sense.
Shoorpanakha and Shakuni. Wow, these writers sure knew how to evoke emotion, in this case, revulsion, in the very naming of their characters. I'm curious, Mahesh, what was an early experience where you learned that language has power?
Well, it's been uh, a long relationship with language. Yes. And sometimes I wonder whether language is overrated.
Hmm.
Yes, of course, it can be very powerful, but I think the power doesn't, at least this is what's in my mind right now, the power doesn't lie with the language.
Hmm.
It's what language represents
Hmm.
that has power. And that, there've been discourses on how limited language is, that language doesn't truly express
Hmm.
human thought, feelings, and emotions.
Hmm.
And so the need for art. So in that sense, if you look at art as a language, yes, it is indeed very powerful. Because apart from primeval expressions, if you look at how we have grown as a civilized species,
Hmm.
and how we've evolved socially, I think art serves the purpose of primeval language.
Hmm.
It is the mode of expression. So in that sense, yes, language does have power, but it's not just the words, but it is language in a larger sense of the word.
Right, right. Each play you write must feel like your own baby. And when others direct your plays, do you worry about how your play will be interpreted, whether actors will articulate your vision sensitively? And on the flip side, how does it feel for you to direct another playwright's work?
Right. Yes. Both are very interesting questions, and yes, I do get the first one asked a lot. The thing is that you write a play
Mm.
so that other people can direct it. Right. You don't write a play because you want to. Well, you could write it to direct it yourself, but I
Mhm.
think some of the charm of it lies in how other people interpret your work.
Mm.
And I think that's so much a part of any artistic endeavor, that
Mm.
even if I were to paint a picture, I'm not going to paint it and just hang it in my living room. I would want it to be hung in a gallery. Not,
Mhm.
well, yes, I mean, to sell it, that's also a valid reason. But you do want people to respond to that work of art.
Mm.
So in that sense, art is definitely a social activity that you
Mm.
do want to connect, that it is our need to connect, which drives us to this. So in that sense, if you look at it in that perspective, it's perfectly fine if directors interpret something I've written different to what I'd envisioned it.
Mm.
I guess it's a bit like you said, if you use the analogy of the baby, then we can take it further that
Mm.
yes, you might birth a baby, but then how the baby grows up and who that baby is going to be as a young adult and as an adult, how much of it is something you within your control?
Mm.
It really can't be. Yes, you can offer direction. Yes, what you provide in terms of socio-economic setting for the child will in a large way determine who that child turns out to be. But then what school does the child go to? What kind of friends does your child have? Who are the people your child falls in love
Mm.
with,
Mm.
admires? What are the stories your child listens to? All that goes into shaping the identity of your child, and I don't think it's that different
Right.
in an art, collaborative art like theater.
Mm.
So often you hear that actors say, I never ever imagined that people would laugh at that point, right?
Mm.
So there is something very unpredictable about it. And I think the charm and the art lies in its unpredictability and
Mm.
all the variables that
Right.
go into a particular play, a particular director, a particular set of actors and set designers and light designer, and a particular audience, Like one of these things change and it's a different experience, right? Same play for a different audience will be a different experience.
Right.
So I think that's very much like life. It's a bit of a dance between all this. And either you enjoy the dancing or you don't.
Right.
And if you think you are in control of the dance, then I don't think you should do theater.
Right. Not only are you a prolific playwright, you're also a critically acclaimed director of plays and films. How do you see the future of theater in India?
Well, I think India has such a long tradition of theater. The kind of theater we do in urban India, I'm not sure it really is a continuity of that tradition. That so much of the theater we do in the cities is really drawn from the cantonment theater, the kind of theater that the British brought in. But having said that, there are attempts to draw from the traditional sources, not just folk theater, but even classical theater. And I think, to me, that's where the future of theater lies in India, because it's very, very unique, our tradition, right? But our contemporary theater, I'm not so sure where it stands in terms of power and its ability to cross borders and time as well. In any case, that's really not what we're focused on. You focus on it's a very immediate art. It's very specific to its time and place. But at the same time, I think when you've found the truth. And the truth is, like what you rightly said, that, why have these stories survived? Why have they become myths? Why have they become religions, right? If you look at all the religions, they're actually the greatest stories ever told. That we've made them into religions. If you look at the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament. If you look at Islam, the Quran has all these stories. There are jinns, and there are there is supernatural power, and the parables of Christianity, and of course if you look at the story within the stories of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, that each scene, each episode has a story in itself, right? So that is the power of storytelling. And I think this is what is exciting about the theater, is that it does contain these very, very basic elements of storytelling. So to answer your question, what is the future of Indian theater? I don't know. Because I think that's a question we can ask about theater. What is the future of theater? First of all, under these trying times, but of course these are not going to last. I mean, we're looking at 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But then again, there will be theater, the kind of theater where we can participate, where we can share the same space. That's very important. So I'm quite hopeful that I think Indian theater it's contemporary Indian theater is a fledgling right now, but it will take wings, it will fly, and I'm very hopeful that it will have its place in the globe. It definitely will.